Hey, what's going on, my friends? This is Solomon. Hey, listen, today I'm going to talk about how these four weird little secrets will turn you into a transformational leader now. Right? I learned this when I was going to the school at the Citadel and to become a Marine Corps officer. Hey, how you doing, Don Q? How are you, buddy? Just please, when you join, just say where you're calling from. I'm over here from San Diego, enjoying the weather. It's about 75 degrees right now. So I'm excited about this weather. Pretty beautiful. So today I'm going to talk about four little known weird secrets that will turn you into a transformational leader now. And I learned these strategies, these little weird techniques, when I was going to the school at the Citadel. I met a man by the name of Mr. Acoin. And Mr. Acoin was powerful. He was wise. He was rich. He was successful. He became my mentor. He was also the Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of South Carolina. And what's interesting was I remember he invited me to his house. He said, Solomon, come to my house for lunch. And after we had lunch, I had to ask him. I said, Mr. Acoin, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you become wealthy? How did you become successful? You're a great leader. You have a great family. You're very healthy. You're successful. You have politicians knocking down your door asking you for your support. How did you do it? You became the Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of South Carolina, and you did this with only a 6th grade level education. And he looked at me and he said, come here, Solomon. Let me show you something. And he guided me. He walked me through his house. And he says, what we're about to go into is by far the most important room in my home. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm curious on what it is. So we went inside the room. And there it was. He said, Solomon, what do you see? What's obvious in this room? I said, obviously, Mr. Acoin, this is your office. And you have a great library. I mean, he had books separated. It was all books and then CDs and tapes. And it was separated into real estate, into wealth, into finances, into health, into psychology, into leadership, into history, and real estate, and stock market. And I said, your library is phenomenal. He said, Solomon, remember this. He said, the first lesson that I'm going to teach you today, the first lesson I'm going to teach you, since you're going to be under my mentor is this, mentorship. He says this, remember this, Solomon. Wealthy people has big libraries. Poor people have big TVs. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to invite this dude over my house. I got a big ass TV. He'll figure me out real quick, right? And I told him that. He started laughing. And then he says, remember this, Solomon. Since you're going to be with me, I want you to do this. I said, what's that, Mr. Acoin? I want you to write a goal to earn $1 million. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, Mr. Acoin, that's awesome. I like you already. And then he says something that was shocking. He said, then I want you to give it all away. And I'm thinking to myself, and I looked at him and I said, hey, Mr. Acoin, what are you smoking? I never heard something like that. He said, stop being hard-headed. Stop being from New Jersey, Solomon, and just listen to me. And this time he was getting serious. Anytime he talked about money and anytime he talked about personal professional development, he became very, very serious because it was his expertise. And it was how he turned himself from being poor to a very, very affluent and influential person. So he said, remember this, Solomon. He said, I want you to write a goal to earn $1 million. Then I want you to give it all away. Because it's not the money that's important. It's the person that you become in pursuit of the money that becomes important. And I'm thinking to myself, I never heard philosophy like this. I never heard people told me, teaching me something like this. And he says, remember this, Solomon, you're the average of the 5 people that you're always with. I said, what do you mean, Mr. Coin? He said, do you have 5 broke friends? And I can think. I said, yes, absolutely. I do have 5 broke friends. He says, and do you hang out with them often? I said, yes, they're my good friends. And he said, remember this, Solomon, if you're hanging out with 5 broke friends, I can only imagine that you're the 6th broke friend. And I'm thinking to myself, the man is right. I was 25 years old. I didn't understand this concept. I never heard this type of philosophy. And he was feeding me his philosophy. And then he says something that was shocking. He says, Solomon, I want you to model success by standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean, Mr. Coin? And he was trying to teach me this philosophy and trying to teach me all this, trying to teach me what he meant by that. And after 3 years, I just did not understand the concept of what he was trying to teach me. By modeling success, by standing on the shoulders of giants. And he was trying to teach me this. And it wasn't until I became a United States Marine officer, and I was stationed at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. And I met generals and colonels who really, really taught me the fundamentals of leadership, of transformational leadership. One in particular, he selected me to be his protocol officer. And I remember this general was dynamic. He was inspirational. He was powerful. He was transformational. He was a visionary. He was everything that I wanted to be like. And I remember there was times where people would just magnetize themselves to him. They would follow him. I mean, his staff loved him, absolutely loved this general. And I asked his aide one time, I said, hey, Don, how is the general so incredibly powerful, so incredibly magnetic? And he said, dude, the general will wake up every morning, like at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he will wake up and he would just read books on business, read books on leadership, on military leadership, on military history. He would read books on the psychology. He would read anything to really build his mind. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. And then he says something that was really shocking. He said, dude, while you're on your 10th dream, the general just got his 2nd wind. The general will wake up and study and read, and then he'll take 1 hour to exercise, to prepare himself both mentally, psychologically, and physically so that he can overcome any challenges that he knows he's going to face for that day. And he'll be ready mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually. And that had a profound. Here's what I learned from the general. The best this just absolutely transformed the way I think, the way I live, the way I act as a father, as a husband, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a speaker. Here's the greatest lesson that I learned from the general, is that the greatest gift that you can give to your family, your friends, your Marines, your loved ones, is the gift of your own personal and professional development. When I understood that concept, I started waking up 4 o'clock in the morning. I started reading the books. I started exercise. Well, I always exercise because it's just something that I take value in. I value my body and my physical health. But I started to change my psychology, and this started to change me into a more confident individual. Especially considering the fact that I grew up with a speech impediment, and now I'm giving speeches all around the world, and I'm even broadcasting on Periscope with total confidence because I understand the concepts. I've been preparing myself mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically. And that general changed my life just from learning and seeing. And it's not as much as what he showed me that made an impact as much as what he it's not as much as what he told me that made an impact, but as much as what he showed me that made a tremendous impact in my life. And I'm forever grateful. The next person that had an impact in my life, the next person was a man by the name of Colonel Hunifield. He was just absolutely a dynamic manager. He was a dynamic manager. He was like the master puppeteer. The master puppeteer. He knew how to handle people, manage people and personnel, and he taught me the psychology of influence. He taught me the psychology of influence, how to effectively manage people and personnel. Here's what the colonel taught me. He taught me that all dynamic managers have a severe case of PTSD. What do I mean? P. They understand how to improve processes, implement procedures, and train personnel. T. They understand how to train personnel both personally and professionally. S. He taught me that strict supervision is the key to effective leadership and management. And then D. He also taught me how to become a dynamic, here's the key, a dynamic disruptor. Here's why. Disruption leads to innovation. Innovation leads to technology. Technology is what helps improve process, procedures, and personnel. And that's what will help you become an effective management of both personnel and resources. The colonel taught me well. Thank you for the kisses, Kajami, and the love. I appreciate it. I see all the loves. I appreciate it. Let me see the hearts. Let me see the hearts. I appreciate the love. Let me see. There you go. A little more. Thank you for the love and thank you for the hearts. So he taught me how to become a dynamic manager. Then there was another general that taught me leadership, sound principle leaderships. And I became his aide de camp. And what he taught me, I remember one time he tasked me the first day of my job as an aide. He said, Solomon, I need this task. And he tasked me to do a report. And I created this report. And I remember giving it to the general. I said, General, here's your report. Confident, because I gave 100% of my time, effort, and energy in preparing this report. And he took the report, opened it up, closed the folder, and gave it to me and said, Solomon, is that the best you can do? And I looked at him and I grabbed the report and I said, no, General, that's not the best that I can do. And I grabbed the report and I walked away and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, maybe he's regretting that he picked me to be his aide. Maybe he's regretting that. Maybe he's saying that I'm the worst captain ever. Maybe he's just, and all these negative thoughts. You know how all these negative thoughts come to our mind. And then I'm just thinking, then all of a sudden that night, I'm telling you, I gave 10,000% in my time, effort, and energy in preparing this report. I gave 10,000%. I stayed up all night preparing myself for this report, preparing this report. The next morning, I gave to the general. I was walking to the general. I said, and this time I was afraid. I was scared. I was scared because I didn't want to disappoint the general. So I gave him the report. I said, General, here's your report. I had to cover the fear in my voice, right? So I had to make it deep. General, here's your report. He looked at me, grabbed the folder, opened it up, closed it, and he said, is that the best you can do? And because I knew I gave 10,000% of my time, effort, and energy, somehow, whatever I said, I convinced him. And I said, General, and whatever I told him, right? And so the general took the report, and he looked at me, and he said, okay, I guess it's time for me to review it then. I looked at the general, I turned around, and I said, wow, this is going to be a long 12 months. But here's what I learned from the general. I've learned never to give or to accept 100% of yourself or people that you lead and manage. Here's why. When you give 100%, it leads to a divorce. When you give 100%, it'll make you get fired. When you give 100%,